Have you ever felt like someone was watching you, even when you were alone? Have you ever crossed paths with someone who gave you an unexplainable chill? What if I told you it's not just your imagination, that the real predator doesn't live in movies? It might be standing right beside you, smiling. Vampires were never a myth. They simply changed shape, adapted, and now hide where no one would suspect, in power, in media, in the shadows of your daily life. Forget everything you think you know. This story isn't about capes, castles, or wooden stakes. It's about a truth buried for centuries, now leaking through the cracks of reality. Real cases, suppressed investigations, historical figures who seem ageless. That fear you feel? Maybe it's your instincts trying to warn you. In this video, you'll hear chilling reports, legends that make far too much sense, and signs that maybe, just maybe, you've already been watched. But be warned, the more you know, the harder it'll be to unsee it. So, are you ready to face what's been right in front of you all along? A whisper in the dark. It was just another night, the kind where silence weighs heavier than sleep. A man was walking home from work, exhausted, when he heard a whisper coming from the alley beside his house. It sounded like someone calling his name, but in a raspy, dragging, almost inhuman voice. He froze for a moment, unsure if the fear was real, or just the mind playing tricks. But the red eyes staring back from the shadows told him the terror was just beginning. In the days that followed, subtle but disturbing changes began. Flickering lights, shadows moving without wind, and a constant chill inside the house, even with all the windows shut. His wife claimed to see someone standing at the bedroom door in the middle of the night, but when she turned on the light, nothing, just the echo of silence and that creeping feeling of being watched. The suspense grew, night after night, like a presence feeding on the family's fear. One night, their daughter woke up screaming. She said, the man with the sharp teeth tried to pull her through the window. They rushed to her room and found strange marks on the windowsill, like claws scraping the wood. Terror overtook the house. Sleep became unbearable. Every sound, every flicker, brought with it the cold breath of suspense and fear, and despite prayers and rituals, the sense of being hunted only deepened. They sought help. First a priest, then a medium, and finally a local historian. It was the historian who spoke in hushed tones about the region's old reports. Decades earlier, in that very same street, a woman had been found pale, drained of blood, with 2 puncture wounds on her neck. The case was never solved, but the older locals still spoke of the children of the night who hunted in silence, not just for blood, but for something deeper. Fear. Haunted, the family moved away. But even in the new home, the father began noticing the same signs. Figures in the corner of his eye, cold drafts, whispers. It was as if something had latched on to him. What frightened him most was seeing others around him begin to show the same symptoms. Was he marked? Had he crossed paths with something not human? Meanwhile, others from the old neighborhood began sharing similar experiences. Voices calling their names, lights cutting out, and red eyes flashing for just a split second. Police said it was mass hysteria, but the residents knew better. Something ancient had stirred. Something that once walked freely among us. Then, on one of the coldest nights of the year, a body was found in a vacant lot. No blood, no signs of struggle. Just 2 deep puncture wounds, and a face frozen in absolute terror. The media made no mention of vampires, but those who had heard the whisper in the dark knew this was only the beginning. The Highgate Vampire legend. It was 1970. In the heart of London, an old cemetery cloaked in fog and forgotten time became the stage for one of Europe's most chilling tales. Highgate Cemetery, famous for its Gothic architecture and ivy-covered tombs, hid more than bones and memories. Locals began reporting sightings of a tall, hooded figure with eyes glowing like embers. Fear spread like a silent poison, and terror once again walked among the dead. Witnesses described a floating being, draped in a dark cloak, gliding through the cemetery paths. Animals were found dead, drained of blood. Teenagers who entered to explore came out in shock, muttering nonsense, unable to sleep for days. The suspense consumed the entire neighborhood, and for the first time in modern history, the word vampire was spoken aloud again, with real fear. Two amateur investigators, David Ferrant and Sean Manchester, began exploring the site. One dabbled in occult rituals. The other claimed the entity was real and must be destroyed with ancient methods. Steak, garlic, fire. The feud made headlines. The cemetery became a battleground for skeptics, fanatics, and thrill-seekers. But the fear was real. People kept disappearing, and those who returned came back different, pale, silent, with hollow eyes. One of the most disturbing accounts came from a young woman who said she was attacked in the main mausoleum. She woke with deep scratches, intense fever, and vague memories of a figure watching her while she slept. Doctors couldn't explain her symptoms, but the locals began locking their doors before sunset, reinforcing windows. Something old had awakened and now roamed freely under cover of night. The media mocked the story, calling it hysteria, but historical documents reveal even police avoided patrolling the area after dark. An invisible pressure, a suffocating presence seemed to seep from the cemetery walls. Some claimed that during full moons you could hear whispers in Latin echoing through the tombs. Others swore they saw figures moving among the trees. Even when there was no wind, suspense became a daily occurrence. Terror, a routine. The Highgate case became legend, but was never fully resolved. The cemetery refused interviews for years. To this day, visitors report chills, strange sounds, and the crushing sensation of being watched. Tourists who mock the legend often leave with headaches, nosebleeds, and nightmares that last for weeks. Coincidence? Or is the ancient vampire still resting beneath the catacombs, waiting for the next fool to trespass? What few realize is that after this case, similar stories began surfacing in cemeteries around the world. Could it be the same entity? Or a silent network of creatures spread across the globe, bound by an ancient pact? The truth might be buried in forgotten archives, or pulsing quietly in the veins of those who've already been marked. They were never a myth. Vlad Tepes, Vlad the Impaler. The name alone carries the weight of fear and terror. Known for his brutal cruelty against his enemies, he became the ultimate symbol behind the famous Count Dracula. But what few know is that there are historical records describing Vlad with unusual habits, like bathing in the blood of the defeated and performing midnight rituals. Details that defy logic, yet persist in the dark margins of history. Then there's Elizabeth Báthory, the Blood Countess. Convicted for torturing and killing hundreds of young peasant girls, she believed that virgin blood rejuvenated her skin. A woman of elite status, feared, powerful, and surrounded by mystery. Some believe her crimes were merely a cover-up for something even darker. An ancestral bloodline that fed not just on life, but on fear. In ancient letters recovered from obscure Eastern European archives, scholars found references to nocturnal beings who negotiated with nobles in exchange for protection. They weren't called vampires, but the descriptions matched: pale, dark side, sharp smiles. The text spoke of silent pacts, rituals beneath castles, screams swallowed by thick stone walls. And the suspense grows when you realize these figures never vanished, they simply adapted. Inquisition documents mention trials of creatures that wouldn't die by hanging or decapitation. Medical records from the time describe bodies that didn't decay, eyes that wouldn't close, hearts that beat days after death. In isolated villages, even today, elders refuse to speak certain names after sundown. There's a silent terror in these regions, an unspoken pact between past and present. Perhaps the most disturbing part isn't what's written, but what was erased. Burned libraries, sealed archives, rewritten stories. Are we being protected from the truth or kept ignorant for convenience? There are signs that secret societies have protected vampires over the centuries, ensuring their survival in the shadows of power. And the more you dig, the clearer it becomes. Fear has always been there, disguised as folklore, dressed up as fiction. The fascination with these figures goes beyond legend. Psychologists, historians, even theologians have studied the topic. All try to rationalize, to explain it away, but some reports are simply unexplainable. Like a letter from 1894 where a doctor describes a patient who did not age, did not eat, and avoided sunlight with irrational desperation. Coincidence? Or another loose thread in this nightmare tapestry? So, if they were never myth, where are they now? If history buried them so well, what else have we missed? And most disturbing of all, would you recognize one if they looked you in the eye? Unexplained cases in the 21st century. We're no longer in the Middle Ages. We have cameras on every corner, social media tracking everything, cutting-edge technology. And yet, there are stories that still slip through the cracks of logic. Like the young man in Romania, found in his apartment, body completely drained of blood, no signs of forced entry, and 2 small circular wounds on his neck. Forensics ruled out suicide, overdose, or standard homicide. Fear spread fast, but officially nothing was ever filed. In the U.S., a night shift nurse swore she treated a woman with no heartbeat, yet fully conscious. The woman spoke in whispers, refused bright lights, and her eyes changed color depending on the lighting. The incident never appeared in hospital records, but months later the nurse disappeared. The only thing left was a diary, pages torn out and a single line scrawled across the last one. He found me. Then there's the group of teens in rural Argentina who spent a night filming in an abandoned cemetery. The footage was never released, but one witness claimed they heard screams, smelled burnt iron, and saw a figure rising from the earth itself. When found, the teens were in a deep state of shock, glassy-eyed, severely dehydrated. What happened there remains a mystery, but for those involved, the terror never left. In Russia, a wave of disappearances triggered a federal investigation. All victims were young, healthy, with no prior health issues, vanishing during the night, often after leaving parties or dates. Security footage showed their final moments, and in every clip, a hooded figure appeared nearby. Always dressed in black, always facing the camera. None of them were identified. The case files were sealed. The city lives in fear to this day. And then there are urban legends. People claiming they were followed by pale strangers with no reflections. Rideshare drivers picking up passengers who vanished mid-trip, leaving behind only faint indentations in the seat. These cases multiply online, shared in dark forums where suspense reigns. And fear finds fertile ground. What's most disturbing about these modern cases is how closely they mirror ancient ones. Logic tells us it's mass hysteria, shared delusions. But when stories from opposite ends of the world describe the exact same signs, can we still call it coincidence? Maybe the real question isn't why these cases happen, but why they're still being hidden. And if these appearances aren't remnants of the past, but signs that something far older is slowly returning. Conspiracy theories, vampires in power. There's a silent pattern among the people who rule the world. Always youthful appearances, calculated smiles, eyes far too cold to be human. Leaders, billionaires, influencers, all carrying an aura that seems to defy time itself. Conspiracy theorists have been pointing to something far darker behind these elites. What if they don't just control the world? What if they feed off it? And what if fear and terror are their most valuable currency? There are records of secret meetings among the powerful, like the infamous Bilderberg Group, where the press is banned and details never leak. Rumors suggest that at midnight, these meetings involve more than just financial contracts, but blood pacts. A former security guard once revealed that the wine at those events was often replaced with a dark, thick liquid. He disappeared soon after. Many public figures exhibit strange behaviors. Eyes reflecting light in unnatural ways, no visible signs of aging, unnatural stamina. A European politician, well into his 70s, was caught on camera during a dinner, and in one still frame, his eyes had no pupils. The video was swiftly deleted, but those who saw it still get chills remembering it. A camera glitch or a slip in the perfect disguise? And it's not just politicians, major CEOs, tech moguls, entertainment giants, they all have access to blood banks, private clinics, genetic labs. Some believe modern vampires don't need to drink blood from the neck anymore. They feed off psychic energy, fear, chaos, digital addiction. A constant state of panic, anxiety, and overstimulation, carefully cultivated for mass consumption. It's not just horror anymore, it's a system. Former media insiders claim certain storylines in films and series are commissioned to normalize vampire presence in pop culture. The dark aesthetic, the seduction of evil, the romanticization of predators, all designed to make the enemy more relatable. Because the more familiar they seem, the less we fear them. That's how they blend in, winning awards, setting trends, feeding in plain sight. Leaked documents from an international research group reveal experiments in extreme longevity and genetic modification. Strangely, several public figures listed in those files are never seen during the day. Their appearances are strictly nocturnal, in controlled environments under soft lighting. Too many coincidences? Or are these just cracks in the illusion? So what if the top of the food chain isn't human anymore? What if we're already living in a world shaped by beings who haven't tasted mortality in centuries? The fear isn't just that they exist. It's the possibility that they've already won. And now, we're the ones living under their control. Signs you're being watched. It all starts subtly. You wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, no clear reason. The room is quiet, too quiet, but something's off. That sensation of being watched presses against your skin like cold breath. You try to shake it off. Just a dream, you whisper, but deep down, you know. Fear doesn't lie. Days later, the patterns begin. Lights flicker as you enter rooms, mirrors fog up without heat, shadows move at the corner of your vision, and the dreams? Always the same. A tall, still figure, watching you from afar, and just as you approach it, you wake up, breathless, soaked in sweat. Instinctively, you feel it wasn't a dream. It was a message. People around you notice the shift. You're more withdrawn, sleep-deprived, pale. You start gravitating toward the cold, the dark, the silence. Some report hearing whispers when alone. Others feel a constant weight on their backs, as if someone follows closely, breathing down their neck. Doctors blame stress, but those who know the truth understand the terror is real. A woman in Sao Paulo claimed she dreamt of a man standing at her bedside for 3 nights. On the 4th, she woke up with bruises on her neck, marks no doctor could explain. A teenager in Lisbon began drawing faces obsessively, strange ones, always the same sunken eyes and sharp teeth. His grandmother recognized the man immediately, the same figure that haunted her childhood. Fear, it seems, can be passed down like a curse. Marked individuals often notice their electronics glitch. Pets avoid them. Mirrors seem to distort their reflections. And the strangest part, they start to change. Something inside begins to fade, like part of their essence is being drained, slowly. No cure, no explanation, just the quiet terror of knowing they're not alone. Some try to break free. They move, perform rituals, seek help. Sometimes it works, briefly. But the signs always return, like whatever watches them has infinite patience. It waits, observes, and strikes when you're weakest. The suspense never ends. It's a game where the hunter wears no face, only the mask of time. And if you're listening now thinking, I've felt that, maybe it's already too late. Because the first sign that you've been chosen is the chill you're feeling right now. That sense of unease, that silence around you. And if you think you're alone in this moment, maybe it's time to turn around. What if they're already among us? Think about it. How many people do you know who just don't seem to age, who avoid the sun, have strange habits and eyes that feel too deep? Sometimes terror doesn't come from the unknown. It hides in the details we overlook every day. Some say vampires don't live in Transylvanian castles anymore. They live in penthouses, behind screens, beneath spotlights. And the real fear begins when that theory starts making sense. Modern life didn't destroy vampires, it empowered them. They now have access to legal blood banks, exclusive clinics, advanced rejuvenation tech, flawless disguises. They feed on influence, on energy, on control. Why hunt at night when they can drain everything they need with a post, a trend, a whispered idea? Suspense has gone digital. Terror now wears designer suits. And here's the terrifying part. Maybe you've already met one. A stranger on the subway who stared for just a little too long. A teacher with eyes that seem to read your mind. That neighbor who never appears in daylight and always looks. Perfectly preserved. Most people ignore these signs because to accept them would be to awaken an ancient fear. The fear of the predator you can't see. Alternative researchers believe vampires evolved. They're no longer afraid of garlic, crosses, or even sunlight, but they still avoid exposure. They've adapted. They blend. They've built networks. And disbelief? That's their best weapon. Because while we laugh at these stories, they watch. While we doubt, they get closer. Some insiders claim there are secret groups monitoring them, that there have been attempts to eliminate them. All failed. These creatures are patient, nearly immortal, and they manipulate time like no one else. Every generation, they change names, countries, identities, but never their hunger. Their mission is simple: survive and control. Not through armies or war, but through silent power, feeding off collective fear and emotional chaos. So stop and ask yourself, why do you sometimes feel watched, even in empty rooms? Why do certain places drain your energy? Why do some people instantly make your skin crawl? Maybe your instincts are right. Maybe your senses are trying to warn you. And maybe, just maybe, you've already been noticed. The terror isn't out there. It might be right beside you, smiling. In the end, the most terrifying question isn't if they exist. It's, what do they want with us? And why are we still alive? Now that you've heard it all, can you really say vampires are just fiction? Or have they simply changed faces, names, and addresses, and continued feeding off us in silence? The truth is, the most real kind of terror doesn't come from the supernatural. It comes from what we refuse to see. And what if everything you heard in this video is just the beginning? Think about the signs, the coincidences, the stares that linger too long. So tell me, have you ever felt something wrong about someone, but couldn't explain why? And what if it's real? What if they are watching those who are starting to wake up? That's why you need to drop a comment below. Have you ever experienced something strange? Do you know someone who fits the profile? Let's connect the dots together. And if you made it this far, it means something in you wants to know more, to see past the illusion. So, don't forget, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and get ready, because this was just the first bite. There's much more fear, suspense, and hidden truth coming your way.